The system of racism, white supremacy, cannot exist without killing. See, this is why you have all of these white mass murderers. You see why so much killing is going on, why guns are so important. Because there can't be white genetic survival on the planet without mass killing. Now, this is what people need to begin to understand, and people who classify themselves as white need to have a deeper level of insight into themselves. Into their mindset. And so then why do you see the things that are happening? See, this necessary killing is what we see taking place in Chicago, where you have 60 to 80 people killed, shot anyway, more than 10 killed on a weekend. See, everybody should be saying, wait a minute, halt, what is this? But no, it's non-white people being shot and being killed, and so just keep stepping. It's in line with 1,000 black people killed in Jonestown. Just keep stepping, get them accustomed to mass death. That is the only way the system of racism and white supremacy can survive. So it should, in other words, our agenda as black people should be, number one, put the awareness of the system of racism, white supremacy on top of the table. Let everybody look at it and be the responsible people. Self-respecting black people. You can't have black self-respect if you refuse to look at the power system dynamic that is killing black people. You can't simultaneously say, I respect myself as a black person, if I'm not willing to look at and be determined to understand a system dynamic that is killing black people. And so black people's agenda should be, number one, putting that on top of the table, that this is reality. Every single thing that happens to black people is because of this power system dynamic. And then black people have to, second point, understand that self-respect of black people has been annihilated almost completely by the system dynamic of racism, white supremacy. That's why black people would call themselves being entertained, calling themselves gangsters and thugs and freaks and bitches and hoes. And so that is the evidence of the annihilation of black self-respect. And so black people have to be determined. They are going to recover their self-respect. And they are going to begin relating to other black people as though they have respect for themselves and have respect for one another. I would call those behaviors reflecting black mental health while simultaneously countering racism. See, if no non-white people on the planet, if non-white people on the planet decide they were no longer going to kill one another, the system of white supremacy would collapse. See, just imagine in the Middle East, all the non-white people in the Middle East, different shades of black. If they said tomorrow we are not going to, throw out all of this different religious sects. We are going to operate on the basis of we are all non-white. We are under a system of racism, white supremacy. We are no longer going to kill each other. See, if black people in this area of the world understood system of racism, white supremacy, why it exists, and decide, wait a minute, we have been programmed to hate ourselves and to hate and destroy one another. And so we're no longer going to do that. Our behavior is going to be codified. Our behavior is going to be transformed. Our level of respect for ourselves is going to be transformed. We're not going to name call one another. We're not going to curse one another. We're not going to squabble with one another. We're not going to snitch on one another for reasons of personal gain. We're not going to be discourteous or disrespectful to one another. We're not going to steal from one another, rob one another, fight one another, kill. We don't do that. That was behavior conditioning under the system of racism, white supremacy. We are now comprehensively understanding that. And so we are under self-monitoring. You know, people call selfies, you know, taking pictures of yourself with the phone. We are under selfie monitoring. Everybody is monitoring their own behavior so as to transform this area of the world and the world. Non-white people are going to reprogram themselves based on comprehensive understanding. See, no using and selling drugs to one another. Helping black children to learn and understand that children having children is something that black people no longer do. You have to be mature. Black people need to be 30 years old before they have any children. They need to go to school, master reading, master math, do you see, understanding, train so that you know how to work. You know how to do many different kinds of work so that you can be employed by somebody else and you can also be self-employed. Stop using and selling drugs. Stop throwing down trash where black people live, work, and play. Stop pretending that racism, white supremacy does not exist. And stop allowing black, brown, red, and yellow people being divided by racism, white supremacy. See, if black people could teach themselves to read, or black people could learn to read in a dirt floor cabin under the conditions of formal slavery, then black people, you know, say, look, if the schools under the system of racism, white supremacy are not teaching our children, we will teach our children at home. But somebody 15, 16 years old trying to reproduce, you see, that's just confusion. It's not being adequately guided. We can call it counter-racist black child production and development. You see, where there was not sufficient guidance, because if children don't get their emotional needs met, then they will prematurely act out sexually as a way of comforting, trying to comfort themselves, because the parents didn't know how to meet the emotional needs of children. But see, I say all of this we can begin to learn and understand as we transform ourselves so that we become instruments for the production of justice on the planet, countering the system of racism, white supremacy. Not spending any time hating white people. We don't have time for that. It's a waste of energy and it's cheap.